at its lowest point, the Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped 89%. The problem today is 5 times worse. So how much is it going to drop? Well, I don't think it's going to drop 100%, but I think we could revisit that 89%. Now, that's from the top to the bottom. So what does that mean in today's numbers? Well, the market was 14,162 at the top. And if you take 89% of that and you take what's left, you get 1,260 on the Dow. That's 1,260. And the Dow's 8,000. So we could have an awful long way to go, and this is why we at the International Forecaster have been telling people ever since the market topped out at 14,000 to get out, with the exception of gold and silver shares and a few oils if you want them. And that's it. That is it. It's gold and silver-related assets the only way that you're going to save your bacon, and there is no other way.
Well, I really fear that so many people are not going to take your advice, Bob, and they're going to be wiped out. But I will tell you, one of the most gratifying things to me is how often we will get calls from our listeners who will say, I just want to thank you so very much because we took your advice and we got out of debt, and, of course, we're in good shape now while most people are not. Well, this is Dr. Stan, and we were just telling Bob Chapman that certainly his advice on our programs has helped a lot of our listeners who got out of debt, who quit spending, who began to to lay away things, and they're prepared for the difficult times that lie ahead. And believe me, ladies and gentlemen, irrespective of what Timothy Geithner, member of the Trilateral Commission, member of the Council on Foreign Relations, member of the Bilderbergers, member of the Group of 30, and of course until recently the president of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, no matter what Timothy Geithner does tomorrow to try to go ahead and come up with a plan to spend the other $350 billion, it's not going to solve the problem any more than the massive spending program, another $800 billion, is going to solve the problem, because we've already put out very close to or pledged or promised $10 trillion. They're not telling the American people that. Somewhere between $9 and $10 trillion. Please go to our website at radioliberty.com, and pull down my November newsletter, which lists from the Federal Reserve Board's own statement and own statistics the amount of money that was put out last year. When I wrote the newsletter in November, it was about $7.4 trillion had already gone out, and after that another $1 trillion, and most recently almost another $1 trillion, well, $800 billion. Oh, difference, what's a couple of $100 billion here or there. And these people are simply spending us into oblivion. There is no better way to destroy a nation than to destroy the foundation of its monetary system, and they are intentionally and maliciously doing that, and there's now one person in a million out there who knows what's really going on. So, Bob, certainly we're going to, of course, see a massive spending program. $800 billion is going to be going out. Will it give us a temporary bump? Will the economy begin to pick up? Will some people begin to go back to work? What do you think?
Well, I think the employment situation that does develop over a 3 to 9 month period, and that's all it'll last. It might be only 2 or 3 months. I don't know. But I do know that the jobs will be created by contractors who are doing what the federal government wants them to do, and otherwise they'd be government jobs. And either way, we pay for it all as taxpayers. And the institution of those temporary jobs is not going to solve the problem. The system has to be purged, and nobody wants to do it. And the people who are in charge, who want to take down the economy of the world so people will accept world government, they want to pick their own spot. And my contention is that it will come once a good-sized war is underway outside the country. And I think that that will be the key that sends everything over the cliff. The U.S. Treasury alone needs, now this is just in the next 8 months, they need $2 trillion. Now, if the question arises, where is it going to come from? Last year, the big buyer of treasuries with the Gulf oil producers, $245 billion. Well, that's when oil was $147 a barrel. Now it's around $40. I don't think they're going to be able to help much. Then the second larger were the Chinese with $232 billion, and they're being rather reticent about being buyers. In fact, this last go-around, they sold Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac paper and took the proceeds and put them into treasuries, but unless you read all the inside reports, you don't know that. And so, can the money come from China or the Gulf producers or the Pacific Tigers? And I don't think so. They're going to have their own set of problems. Their exports have collapsed. They're up 30, 40, 50, 60, 70%. And they're in no condition to do much buying. They, in the last 15 weeks, dumped $190 billion worth of Treasury paper. So that'll give you an idea.
Well, then who's buying the Treasury paper? If they sell it, who is buying it? Are we simply printing money to buy that at the present time?
As far as I'm concerned, the answer is yes.
But
monetization began 3 months ago.
And of course, that is, of course, what leads to hyperinflation down the line. Certainly it won't come for a while. Right now we're in a deflationary spiral. But down the line, this massive increase of money that is being shoved into our economy is going to have disastrous effects. And as Alan Greenspan said, there's no better way to destroy a nation than to debauch the currency. And not one person in a million will know what's going on. Well, this is Dr. Stan back here at Radio Liberty. Our guest is Bob Chapman, and we're discussing what's going on. Of course, you were just talking about how it would appear that the Treasury is beginning to buy up the T-bills, because they're not being bought with the same enthusiasm that they were in the past. Would that be a fair statement, Bob?
That's absolutely correct. And I think the buyers, who already own about $2.5 trillion in either agency or Treasury paper, I just don't think they have the wherewithal now to do that. And the Treasury Pulse at the time, a few months ago, says we're going to do everything we have to do to make it work. And so to me, that was a tip-off that the Treasury was printing bonds, handing them over to the Fed. The Fed was handing money back to them that they created out of thin air. The Fed would either take the bonds and sell them into the market, totally monetizing the situation, or they'd lend them, which is equally as bad. So in March or April, we're going to start seeing some pretty heavy inflation take place again. So what we're getting is a temporary hiatus here of about 8 or 10 months. One of the other things is that the Fed has bought $350 billion worth of commercial paper. Commercial paper market is, I forget the figure, I think it's $1.8 trillion, and it's the biggest paper market in the world. And what happens is the manufacturer gets an order to make widgets, and it'll take them a month to make them, and they need $1 million to make the widgets. And at the end of 30 days, they'll sell them for $2 million. So they go to the commercial paper market, and they say, we need $1 million. And they say, fine, what's your collateral? And they'll put up treasuries or corporate bonds or junk, which is ABS or CDOs. And what's happened in that market is nobody wants ABS and CDOs anymore. And so the Fed had to step in, and $350 billion is quite a piece of change. And then they also entered into the mortgage bond market, and they have begun to buy $600 billion worth of mortgages, mainly through FHA. And so the numbers are colossal. We're looking right now at $12 to $13 trillion that we're going to be responsible for this year. And by the time the year is out, it could be higher than that. And we're going to somewhere between 20 and 30 trillion.
Hold that thought. We'll be back in just a moment. Well, this is Dr. Stan, and certainly Bob was just saying that right now we Sydney and Hawk during this past year, a little over this past year,